It's just a loan, Emily. Stop being dramatic. My mother didn't ask if I was okay while I lay in that hospital bed, hooked up to an IV for kidney failure. She just crossed her arms and watched my sister, Ashley, type my birth year into my iPad and transfer $5,000 to herself for a wedding venue deposit. They walked out 10 minutes later with my money, leaving me alone. That night, my phone buzzed with a text from my father. Since you clearly resent helping us, we are cutting you off for your own good. Don't contact us until you learn gratitude. I stared at the screen and smiled. They thought they were punishing me. But they didn't realize that text message just cost them $284,000. If you were me, lying in that hospital bed, would you have given them a second chance? Or would you have done exactly what I did? Tell me below. I drove home from the hospital to an empty apartment that smelled like stale coffee and exhaustion. My phone was still buzzing with notifications from the family group chat, but I didn't look at them. I sat down at my kitchen table, the one I'd bought secondhand for $50 because I couldn't afford a new one, and opened my laptop. I'm a forensic accountant by trade. My entire career is built on finding the truth hidden inside numbers, spotting the discrepancies that people try to bury. But for years, I had been cooking the books on my own life, refusing to look at the red ink that was drowning me. That night, I finally opened the spreadsheet I had been terrified to look at. I called it the ledger. I started typing, and with every keystroke, a memory hit me. Item 1. The Audi Q7. $42,000. 3 years ago, my father, Leonard, had sat me down in this very kitchen. He didn't ask how I was doing. He didn't ask about the promotion I was gunning for. He just slid a lease agreement across the table. A man in my position can't be seen driving a sedan. Emily, he'd said, adjusting his silk tie. It affects my networking. I need the SUV. I remembered eating instant ramen for dinner that night, chicken flavor. 33 cents a pack because after making the down payment on his image, I didn't have enough left for groceries. I remembered looking at my bank account, seeing double digits, and telling myself it was worth it to see him happy. He drove off in that Audi without even saying thank you. I ate my noodles alone in the dark. They broke me then. But looking at that spreadsheet now, I realized I wasn't just a daughter to them. I was a venture capital firm they didn't have to pay back. Item 2. Richard's investment. $35,000. My brother Richard called it a crypto investment gone wrong. I knew it was gambling debt. He'd come to me sweating, shaking, terrified that loan sharks were going to break his legs. I drained my 401k to pay them off. I incurred penalties, taxes, and set my retirement back by a decade to save him. A week later, at Sunday dinner, Richard had laughed at me. Emily's job is so boring, he'd told the table, pouring wine I had paid for. Staring at spreadsheets all day. No risk, no reward. That's why she's single. The table laughed. I laughed with them, desperate to be part of the joke instead of the punchline. I looked at the total on the screen. $284,500. That wasn't just money. That was my life. That was the surgery I postponed. That was the house I never bought. That was the vacations I never took. I sat back in my chair, the glow of the screen illuminating the empty room. For 29 years, I thought I was buying their love. I thought if I just paid enough, sacrificed enough, and fixed enough, I would finally earn my spot at the table. But looking at the cold, hard math, I realized the truth. I wasn't a family member. I was an asset class. A high-yield bond that they had just tried to liquidate because I missed one payment. And you know what happens when an asset becomes a liability? You write it off. I closed the laptop. The sadness was gone, replaced by the icy calm of an auditor who just found the smoking gun. They wanted to cut me off? Fine. But they forgot one crucial detail about the house they were sleeping in tonight. I stood up and walked to the filing cabinet in the corner. It was time to remind them who actually owned the roof over their heads. I pulled the thick, beige folder from the back of the filing cabinet. The label was peeling slightly. The Leonard and Vanessa Family Trust. To anyone else, a family trust sounds like something for billionaires. A way to pass down empires and avoid estate taxes. But for us, it wasn't a vehicle for wealth. It was a bunker. 3 years ago, my father's entrepreneurial spirit, which is what he called gambling with money he didn't have caught up with him. He had leveraged the house to fund a tech startup that didn't exist. When the company folded, the creditors came for everything. They were going to take the house, the cars, even his pension. I remembered that day vividly. Leonard, the great patriarch, sobbing at the dining room table, begging me to fix it. I can't lose the house, Emily. It's my legacy. So, I fixed it. I used my legal knowledge and my own spotless credit rating to execute a rescue maneuver. We created the trust. I bought the debt, transferred the deed into the trust's name, and appointed myself as the trustee. It was the only way to shield the asset from his bankruptcy proceedings. I saved them. I literally put a legal roof over their heads when the bank was coming to change the locks. And how did they repay me? By resenting me for it every single day since. To them, I wasn't the savior. I was the jailer. Every time I asked about a receipt or questioned a reckless purchase, my mother would sigh and say, "You're so controlling, Emily. You treat your father like a child." I treated him like a child because he spent money like a teenager with a stolen credit card. I ran my hand over the deed. Legally, I held all the cards. I could evict them. I could sell the house. But I knew if I just kicked them out, they would play the victim. They would drag me through court for years, claiming elder abuse, claiming I tricked them, claiming the house was rightfully theirs. They would turn the entire extended family against me. I needed a cleaner cut. I looked at my phone again. The text message from my father was still there, glowing in the dim light. "We are cutting you off for your own good." I read it again. And this time, the irony didn't make me angry. It gave me an idea. They wanted to cut me off? Fine. But they didn't understand the physics of our relationship. I wasn't the anchor holding them down. I was the engine keeping the plane in the sky. If they cut the engine, they don't soar. They crash. But I couldn't just walk away. If I just stopped paying, the bank would foreclose on me as the trustee. My credit would take the hit. I would be the one liable for the fallout. I needed to reverse the polarity. I needed to make them liable for their own mess. My eyes drifted to a clause on page 14 of the trust agreement. Resignation of trustee. It was a standard legal boilerplate. If the trustee resigns, they can appoint a successor trustee. The successor assumes all control and all existing liabilities. A cold realization washed over me. Leonard didn't want a daughter. He wanted a bank manager he could fire. He wanted the prestige of owning the house without the discipline of paying for it. He was desperate to feel like the big man again. If I tried to force him to pay his debts, he would fight me. But if I offered him power, if I offered to step down and hand him the keys to the kingdom, he wouldn't even look at the price tag. I sat back, the plan forming in my mind with terrifying clarity. I wasn't going to fight them. I was going to surrender. I would give them exactly what they claimed they wanted. Total control. I opened a new email draft. I didn't type with anger. I typed with the precision of a surgeon cutting out a tumor. I would apologize. I would grovel. I would set the trap so beautifully that Leonard would walk into it thinking he had won a coronation. I typed the subject line, "Resignation and transfer of assets." Then I smiled. It was time to give Dad his legacy back. Every single dollar of debt he had created was about to come home to roost. The first thing I did was log into the bank portal. It was 2 a.m. on a Wednesday, the screen glowing blue in the dark. For 4 years, the auto-pay feature had been the heartbeat of my family's lifestyle. Every first of the month, a digital pulse of $2,400 left my account and kept the lights on in their world. I moved the cursor to the mortgage tab. My finger hovered over the trackpad. Most people think revenge is about action, throwing a brick through a window or screaming in a crowded room. But real revenge, the kind that leaves a scar, is about inaction. It's about removing the one thing that holds the whole structure together and watching gravity do the rest. I clicked cancel recurring payment. Then I did it for the property taxes. Then the Audi lease. Then the insurance. I didn't feel guilty. I felt like I was finally exhaling after holding my breath for a decade. This wasn't abandonment. It was a performance review. And they had failed. For the next 90 days, I went silent. This was the silent strike. I knew how the banking system worked. The first month, they send a polite reminder. The second month, a stern letter. The third month, the legal threats begin. And here was my advantage. As the trustee, all that mail didn't go to the house where my parents lived. It came to my P.O. box. I watched the letters pile up like snowdrifts. Month 1, payment past due. Month 2, notice of delinquency. Month 3, notice of default and intent to foreclose. I opened the last one. The bold red text at the top was beautiful. Amount to cure default. $12,500. Due immediately. Acceleration of full loan balance scheduled for October 15th. The house was technically underwater. The market had dipped, and with the penalties piling up, there was zero equity left. But Leonard didn't know that. Leonard thought the house was worth a fortune. I knew my father better than he knew himself. He was a narcissist with a gambling problem he called business investment. I knew he was desperate for cash. He had been hinting for months about leveraging the estate to fund a new venture. He didn't want the house to live in. He wanted the title so he could take out a second mortgage or sell it out from under me to pay off his bookie. If I tried to force him to pay the bills, he would play the victim. But if I offered him the asset, if I handed him the deed on a silver platter, he wouldn't ask if the mortgage was paid. He would just grab the pen. I sat down to draft the email. This was the most critical part of the trap. I couldn't sound angry. I had to sound broken. I had to sound like the submissive daughter finally learning her place. Subject: apology and transfer of control. I've been doing a lot of thinking since your text. You were right. I've been using the trust to control you, and that wasn't fair. You are the head of this family, not me. I'm tired of fighting. I want to resign as trustee. I want to sign the full deed and control of all assets over to you immediately. You should be the one making the decisions. I've prepared the paperwork to make you the successor trustee effective immediately. Let me know when you can meet to sign. I just want this over. I hit send. I didn't have to wait long. 3 minutes later, my phone buzzed. It wasn't a call asking about the mortgage status. It wasn't a question about the property taxes. It was a text from Leonard. I'm glad you finally came to your senses, Emily. I'll clear my schedule. Tomorrow at 10. He took the bait. He thought he was walking into a coronation. He had no idea he was walking into a foreclosure. I picked up the notice of default letter and slid it into a fresh red binder. Then I added the tax lien notice and the repossession order for the Audi. I closed the binder with a satisfying snap. The trap was set. All he had to do was sign his name. The conference room at First National is designed to make you feel small. It's a fishbowl of soundproof glass and polished mahogany, suspended above the city streets. I chose it specifically because it looks exactly like the kind of place where important men make important decisions. And Leonard loves to feel important. I sat on one side of the table, my hands folded on top of a single, thin manila folder containing the resignation of trustee. Under the table, resting against my leg, was the thick, red binder. They arrived 10 minutes late, of course. Power move. When the glass door opened, the smell of my father's cologne, sandalwood, and old money filled the room before he did. Leonard walked in wearing the charcoal suit I had bought him for Christmas 2 years ago. My mother, Vanessa, trailed behind him in a cream silk blouse, clutching her pearls like she was attending a funeral for my dignity. Ashley brought up the rear, texting on her phone, looking bored. They didn't look like a family on the brink of financial ruin. They looked like royalty arriving to accept a surrender. Emily, my father said. He didn't sit down immediately. He stood at the head of the table, looking out the window at the skyline. I'm glad we're doing this here. It adds a certain gravitas. Have a seat, Dad, I said, keeping my voice flat. He sat down, adjusting his cufflinks. The notary, a woman named Sarah, whom I'd hired specifically for her poker face, sat silently at the end of the table. I want to say something before we sign, Leonard announced. He clasped his hands on the table, looking at me with a pitying smile that made my stomach turn. Your mother and I have been talking. We know you're embarrassed. We know you realize that you were trying to control things you don't understand. Financial management is a burden, Emily. It's not for everyone. I watched his leg under the table. It was bouncing. Up and down, up and down. A nervous tick. He wasn't just arrogant. He was desperate. He was doing the math in his head right now, estimating the equity in the house, figuring out how quickly he could take out a line of credit against it to pay off whatever secret debts he'd racked up in the last 3 months. He thought he was about to sign a check for $200,000. We forgive you, Vanessa chimed in, her voice soft and airy. We're willing to take this burden off your hands so you can focus on whatever it is you do. Thank you, I said. I appreciate your generosity. I slid the manila folder across the table. This is the successor trustee acceptance form, I said evenly. Once you sign, you take full legal control of the house, the vehicles, and every asset in the trust. I'm out. Completely. Leonard didn't read it. He grabbed the pen, smirking, already convinced he'd won. The pen scratched across the page. To him, it was victory. To me, it was a trap snapping shut. The notary stamped the document. The trust, and every debt attached to it, was now his. After she left, I placed a thick red binder on the table. Since you're the trustee now, I said calmly. These are yours. Assets come with liabilities. Leonard frowned. The mortgage is on autopay. It was, I said. Until 90 days ago. He opened the binder. Notice of default. Tax lien. Order of repossession. I stopped paying 3 months ago, I continued. Mortgage, property taxes, the Audi lease. And because the loan was already modified once, there's no grace period. I pointed to the final page. Sheriff's sale tomorrow, 10 a.m. $42,000. Certified funds. Or the house is gone. His face collapsed. I don't have that kind of money. I know, I said. And as trustee, you're personally liable for the deficiency. Pension. Social Security. Everything. He slammed the table. You tricked me. No, I replied. You demanded control. I gave it to you. Not checking the books before signing? That's not fraud. That's bad business. Security stepped in as his shouting escalated. The fight drained out of him. I walked to the door. You wanted me out of the family, I said. I'm out. And tomorrow. So are you. The house sold at auction the next morning. The Audi was repossessed hours later. Now they rent a small apartment. I live quietly, with modest furniture, a full fridge, and no debt. They called me a burden for years. Turns out, I was the only thing holding them up. Subscribe if you believe in the power of cutting toxic ties.